So, I used to love Jon Stewart back when I was a lefty, and he even had a good moment not that long ago on Colbert where he was questioning the origins of a certain medical condition that came from a certain Eastern country. But what we're going to see here in this interview from his show, The Problem with Jon Stewart, what we're going to see is a disgrace. This is unforgivable. He has just dived in headfirst into the radical gender ideology cesspool, and it's gross. I'm sure he's got a big budget for this show. I'm sure he's got lots of people working for him. I'm sure he's got lots of people to do research. And there's a lot of really salient points that are really not hard to find around this argument. But apparently either nobody on his show found them or he just didn't want to know. So what is at issue here? Well, here's this tweet from The Problem with Jon Stewart. Jon interviewed Leslie Rutledge, Arkansas Attorney General, about why her state banned gender-affirming care for minors. Now, gender-affirming care is a euphemism for puberty blockers, for physical mutilation. But anyway, ignoring the guidelines of major medical organizations and taking the decision out of parents' hands. And here's his interview.
Why would the state of Arkansas step in to override parents, physicians, psychiatrists, endocrinologists who have developed guidelines? Why would you override those guidelines?
Well, I think it's important that all of those physicians, all of those experts, for every single one of them, there's an expert that says we don't need to allow children to be able to take those medications. That there are many instances where...
But you know that's not true. You know it's not for everyone. There's one. These are the established...
Well, I don't know that that's not true. I don't know that...
Then why would you pass a law then if you don't know that that's true? Wouldn't you?
Well, I know that there are...
Okay, let me just clear this up. So let's talk about experts. Sweden's Karolinska ends all use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for minors outside of clinical studies. Concerns over medical harm and uncertain benefits result in a major policy shift. The Karolinska Hospital in Sweden recently, and that's in Sweden, okay, recently issued a new policy statement regarding treatment of gender dysphoric minors. This policy, affecting Karolinska's pediatric gender services at Astrid Lindgren Children's Hospital, has ended the practice of prescribing puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to gender dysphoric patients under the age of 18. The Karolinska Hospital's new policies echo a growing international concern over the proliferation of medical interventions that have low certainty of benefits while carrying a significant potential for medical harm. And it's not just Sweden. Finland revised its treatment guidelines in June 2020, prioritizing psychological interventions and support over medical interventions, particularly for youth with post-pubertal onset of gender dysphoria. Significant changes are also underway in the UK. Following a 2020 High Court judgment, the NHS suspended the initiation of hormonal interventions to minors under 16. Suspended that. And while we're on the topic of the UK, Tavistock Gender Clinic to be sued by 1,000 families. The Tavistock Gender Clinic is facing mass legal action from youngsters who claim they were rushed into taking life-altering puberty blockers. Lawyers expect about 1,000 families to join a medical negligence lawsuit alleging vulnerable children have been misdiagnosed and placed on a damaging medical pathway. I wonder if they have any experts in Europe. I think they probably do. Is Jon Stewart aware of any of this? Maybe. I mean, it would be kind of unbelievably irresponsible to publish this video if he is aware of these things. But anyway, let's continue.
We had plenty of people come and testify before our legislature who said that, we have 98% of the young people who have gender dysphoria, that they are able to move past that. And once they have the help that they need, no longer suffer from gender dysphoria. 98% without that medical treatment.
That's an incredibly made up figure. That doesn't comport with any of the studies or documentation that exists from these medical organizations. What medical association are you talking about of these doctors?
Well, we have all of that in our legislative history, and we'll be glad to provide that to you.
What about studies? Are there any studies? Here's from Dr. James Cantor. January 2016, do trans kids stay trans when they grow up? Following the closure of the CAMH Gender Identity Clinic for Children, I have been receiving requests for what the science says. Do kids grow out of wanting to change sex, or does it continue when they're adults? In total, there have been 3 large-scale follow-up studies and a handful of smaller ones. I have listed all of them below, together with their results. Despite the differences in country, culture, decade, and follow-up length and method, all the studies have come to a remarkably similar conclusion. Only very few trans kids still want to transition by the time they are adults. Instead, they generally turn out to be regular gay or lesbian folks. The exact number varies by study, but roughly 60 to 90% of trans kids turn out no longer to be trans by adulthood. And here we can see the results of the different studies. Here's one from 1972. 2 out of 16 were gay. 4 out of 16 were trans or cross-dressers. 10 out of 16 were straight or uncertain. Here's one from 1979. 0 out of 5 trans. 5 out of 5 gay. Here's a couple of larger studies at 2 out of 44 trans. 1 out of 44 trans. So is her 98% correct? Is there even an exact number? I think the point is that it's an inexact science. But at the very least, most of the children that experience gender dysphoria or something like that simply do grow out of it, which is a great reason to maybe err on the side of caution, which is maybe why the National Academy of Medicine in France advises caution in pediatric gender transition. The National Academy of Medicine in France has issued a press release in which it cautions medical practitioners that the growing cases of transgender identity in young people are often socially mediated and that great caution in treatment is needed. The Academy draws attention to the fact that hormonal and surgical treatments carry health risks and have permanent effects, and that it is not possible to distinguish a durable trans identity from a passing phase of an adolescent's development. And again, I assume, Jon Stewart, they have experts in France. They're not certain. Why are you so certain?
You're suggesting that protecting children means overriding the recommendations of the American Medical Association, the American Association of Pediatrics, the Endocrine Society.
We don't have enough data. We don't have enough to show that these drugs are effective and that these children are better off, and that we should encourage these.
Or it's not enough for you. Let me try and flip it.
I think we've already established that they don't have enough information. Again, I'm astonished that Jon Stewart doesn't know this, but okay. But I wonder if the 1,000 families that's suing the Tavistock Gender Clinic, I wonder if they wish they'd overridden the advice of the relevant health bodies in the UK. Because it seems like they're not very happy with what they were told. Because they're making allegations that this part of the National Health Service recklessly prescribed puberty blockers with harmful side effects and adopted an unquestioning affirmative approach to children identifying as transgender. That was their official policy. The organizations that Jon Stewart's talking about all have that same affirmation model. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe that's something Jon Stewart should know.
You're making it sound like a 9-year-old walks into a doctor's office and says, "Give me some testosterone." And the doctor goes, "Oh, thank God, because we're wanting to create an army of transgenders because we're crazy." Okay,
have you seen this video?
Starting in January 1st of 2017, according to the Affordable Care Act, insurance carriers are mandated to cover medical expenses for trans folks. Some of our BUMC financial folks in October of 2016, starting a couple of years ago, put down some costs of how much money we think each patient would bring in, and this is only including top surgery. This isn't including any bottom surgery, and it's a lot of money. These surgeries make a lot of money. So female to male chest reconstruction can bring in $40,000 A patient just on routine hormone treatment, who I'm only seeing a few times a year, can bring in several $1,000s, because that requires a lot of visits and labs. It actually makes money for the hospital. Now, these I got from the internet, but it's from the Philadelphia Center for Transgender Surgery, which does a lot of surgery for patients. And I just want to give you an idea of how much these bottom surgeries are making. And I think this has to be an underestimate. This is for a vaginoplasty. They're quoting roughly around $20,000 for a vaginoplasty, but that doesn't include your hospital stay, that doesn't include your post-op visits, that doesn't include your anesthesia, your OR. So I would think that this has to be a gross underestimate. I think that's just like the surgeon's piece of it, which anybody who's ever been in the hospital knows that that's like 10% of it. And then the female to male bottom surgeries, these are huge money makers. Again, I think this has to be an underestimate, that they're quoting around $20,000 for a phalloplasty. There's been different things that I've read that said it could be up to $100,000. Dr. Winokur, who's our surgeon, says that there's entire clinics where the entire clinic is supported just by their phalloplasties, and that is like a fraction of the surgeries that they're doing. These surgeries are labor intensive, they require a lot of follow-ups, they require a lot of OR time, and they make money. They make money for the hospital.
Gee, sounds like somebody thinks they can make a lot of money off of this. But people have never done horrible things for money before. That's never happened, right? Maybe we should hear from some young people who are detransitioning, who feel like it was a big mistake. What do they have to say about it? It says here a group of formerly transgender young adults wrote Attorney General Merrick Garland to counter top medical institutions who aim to silence critics of radical gender procedures carried out on minors. I don't know, it seems like those might be exactly the sort of people that you might want to listen to. So there's this letter from 7 detransitioners, and that's following one sent Monday by the American Medical Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, and Children's Hospital Association that urged the Department of Justice to investigate and prosecute all organizations, individuals, and entities that they claimed were coordinating and provoking outrage in response to those providing controversial gender-related treatments. So once again, we have far-left ideologues wanting to criminalize dissent. But what did these former transgender young adults say? Dear Attorney General Garland, we are writing as a group of individuals who formerly identified as transgender. Many of us were young teenagers when we decided, on the direction of medical experts, the same ones that Jon Stewart's talking about actually, to pursue irreversible hormone treatments and surgeries to bring our bodies into closer alignment with what we thought was our true gender identity. Many of us had extensive histories of mental illness. Many of us had experienced significant childhood trauma. But all of this was ignored because we uttered the word gender. This utterance placed us on a narrow medical pathway that led us to sacrifice our healthy bodies and future fertility in obeisance to the claim that our suffering was the result of having a gender identity that did not match our biological sex. In other words, we were born in the wrong body. We didn't know better. We were young and we trusted our doctors. Our parents were also misled. They were told the common myth that if they did not affirm our new identities, which entailed fully approving our medical transition, then we would likely commit suicide. Given these options, what loving parent wouldn't choose to transition their child? This was not informed consent, but a decision forced under extreme duress. Maybe Jon Stewart should talk to these people about the experts. Now what's this? And it actually is just totally disgusting.
Again, the medical community disagrees with you that
Well,
that's
not all of the
protecting
medical
children.
community.
Who doesn't?
We have had experts testify here in Arkansas.
Okay, from what medical organizations?
Well, we have all of those in our briefs, and I apologize that I wasn't prepared to have a Supreme Court argument today in front of you, but we are going to have arguments.
Oh, just look at that. He's so exasperated. He's so exasperated. This man who either has absolutely no idea what he's talking about or who's lying. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know which one it is. All I know is that this is disgusting. Maybe you should talk to these 1,000 families in the UK and ask them what they think about the medical authorities and the medical experts and their advice. And this is just talking about puberty blockers. Never mind surgery. I don't know. They say that the Daily Show was ruined once he left. Looks to me like it would have been ruined either way. Anyway, please subscribe, like, and share. Sharing really helps my content. Thank you for doing that. I will see you next time.